Being in Sync. This is 204th video this year, all about being in sync, alignment, and becoming congruent within. I am Kiana Sage, and today we are talking about is silence consent. So I'm going to begin by telling you the story of this woman who had a friend, and this friend was, let's just say she was not a mystic, but she called herself an energy healer. And she often referred to herself as a shaman and often could see energetically more than most. And they were friends. And this friendship, this woman who was her friend would tell her things that were dark, things that this person, this healer, was doing to her husband that was unkind. And for those of you who don't know, people who call themselves healers but are really running black magic or doing voodoo or whatever, there's all kinds of things out there. This video is really about understanding that there are things that happen energetically that if you can't see it, it doesn't mean it's not occurring or that you're not in agreement with it. So I'm telling you the story about these two people, and this healer was doing these negative, nasty things to her husband and was telling her friend about these things. So her friend was just listening and not saying anything. And in the listening, they were, doing what people do, which is nod their heads. I hear you. Yes. Okay. A little confused. And this person continued to do this story. So as an observer, you might think, well, they were silent. Does that mean that they were in consent? And I want to offer this example as an opportunity for you to look where you may be going into consent or agreement with things, unaware of it. Pablo, good to see you. And you may not even be aware that you've gone into consent. So this woman, this healer, was talking about all these things that she was doing. This friend was listening, being a good listener and nodding her head and okay. And she didn't think anything could ever happen to her because, this person is just talking about what she does with her husband. She's not talking about what she's doing in their friendship. She's just doing nasty, ugly things to her partner. Long story short, if somebody is showing you who they are, believe them. When people are behaving badly with other people, don't pretend or be ignorant that that will not be you, because you have gone into agreement with this relationship. This relationship is a co-creation. And what they're doing energetically with one person, they will be doing with you, whether you realize it or not. So are you consciously in consent to it? Probably not. But are you going into agreement with that energy because you are refusing to say, hey, that is wrong, that is incorrect, I am not in agreement with that occurring. And by not doing that, you go into agreement with it. Now, is agreement conscious consent? No. But when you're working with these types of people, they don't work on a conscious level in that they need your conscious consent. They are taking your nods and your listening. Their nod is an agreement. Like, if that doesn't blow your mind, like, that should tell you how cautious we need to be with the way that we're engaging with people. So this is the story of the two people. Now, the one person didn't think that it would affect them. That's denial. The person who was doing the let's just say nefarious, maybe evil, dark things energetically, consciously, working against the greater good, right? This person doesn't think they need your consent, because once you are in agreement and you are silent, they take that as consent. And therefore, you become a part of this co creation of, by agreement, by a lack of consciously disagreeing, if that makes sense to you. So it's quite an interesting topic, silence is consent, because a lot of times people think that, well, I'm okay. They're not doing it to me. They're okay, so this woman is bad to this other person, but they're not really bad to me. That's just denial. That doesn't mean you're not in collusion or in consent with the nefarious works. And I think this is something that could be very dangerous for people's well being. I don't know, let me correct that. Not, I think. It is very dangerous for people's well being. I don't think this, I know this to be true. From my personal experience and also from what I've seen that has occurred with others. People get sick in ways that they think is, they don't even understand it, but they don't understand it because they're unwilling to look at these relationships that they've gone into agreement with. And that agreement with them has also changed how they align within themselves. And so then they go into agreement with states of weakness and states of vulnerability and states of denial that keep them in these relationships that are unhealthy. Anyways, so is silent consent? What do you think? Are you, there are places where you have gone into consent with things that you didn't agree with, but and you just kept your mouth shut? And did you think that that was okay? And how does that align with your integrity? Does that align with your integrity to create meaning and oneness and clarity and integrity within yourself? Those are great questions to ask. So I appreciate you all being here. I'm going to see if there's any questions. And if there's not any questions, I'm going to jump off. So I'm going back. And Pablo, always good to see you here. Thank you for being here. You're amazing. I love your contributions always. Thank you for the compliments. Hello from Norway. Good to see you here. Is this being recorded? Yes. This is called a live recording. Okay. I'm just looking for questions. Somebody's asking, what's America like? I need consent. Omar says, what are you talking about? Is silence consent? That's the topic. And is you being involved with people, do you understand that that in itself is an agreement? And if you see people or know people or in discussions with people who are doing bad things to other people, does that mean you are consenting to it? That's the question for you to ask for yourself. And I'm telling you from my own personal experience, this causes an illness and a weakness within your field. You become vulnerable. Omar, no, it's being live recorded now. Do you have any questions about silence being consent? Is silence consent? I will say when people are in discussions and they're nodding their heads, when people are saying okay when they don't mean okay, when people are saying, I understand, yes, I understand, what they don't realize is that those are languages of agreement. And the only way to go out of agreement with something that somebody is doing is to consciously say and align with what is true for you. The lack of willingness to do that keeps you in consent with very dark energies. And these dark energies can have impacts on how you align within yourself and within your heart. All right, so I don't see any questions here, so I will leave you with this final thought. When you are going quiet within yourself, when you're in engagement in relationships and you see people who are doing things that are nefarious, wrong, or go against the integrity of what you know to be true as God, kindness, loving acts, then you are going into agreement with them. So if that is something you don't want to do, the challenge is to see where you're doing that. In what relationships are you doing that with? And how could you make a change that puts you more in alignment with who you want to be? Yes, I agree, Omar. Silence is consent in many instances. But a lot of people don't realize that their keeping quiet is going into agreement and alignment with things that they can't necessarily see, but they will feel. And the other thing is illness shows up in many ways. It will always show up in how you are participating in your relationships. And if you are unable to be your most authentic self in your relationships, there are ways that you are shutting yourself down. Those ways will make you sick. Any aspect in which you are shutting down your own heart to not cause ripples of pain for other people, including yourself, you are cutting off your authenticity. And that is an agreement to do that because other people feel more powerful when other people are not in their power. Does that make sense? Especially people who are wanting to take your power. Silence is awkward. Awkward. Silence is awkward and means no. Silence takes on different qualities and tones. It doesn't always mean no, but when you're in relationships, so silence on your own does not mean no, but when you're in silence in relationships, in dynamics, that has a different expression. So Kevin is asking if I am Jewish. I am aligned to oneness, God. I don't affiliate myself with any dogma religion at all. I was raised Catholic, although I would say I don't ascribe to traditional religious dogmas or judgments that come from religion. Does that help you? It's about the Facial compression. I don't understand. Omar, what are you saying? Facial compression. Say more. It doesn't mean yes or no, to be honest. Well, the issue is about being ignorant or unaware that you're nodding your head to somebody, where we're taught to nod your head. Like in America, you're taught, oh, I'm nodding my head. That is consent. That's agreement. And sometimes when you're doing this, you don't agree with what somebody's saying, but it's going into agreement. Also, not saying, hey, what you're doing with your husband is really unhealthy, unproductive behavior, and it shouldn't be done, and not calling out that behavior means that you are going into alignment for somebody to do that behavior to you. And they do, and they will. And because you think in your ego mind that they don't treat you badly, just because you can't see how they're treating you badly because you're in denial, does not mean they're not treating you badly, doing horrible things, saying horrible things, telling lies, mistruth, throwing stuff in your energy field. That stuff happens. People work with sorcerers all the time. Pablo is saying there's no need to speak down to others in order to lift yourself up. Yeah, that's true. But sometimes that's what people do. My brother did that. Does that make him better? No, that just means that somebody's in their ego mind. And people are operating from the ego mind, and they make decisions from the ego mind, and they do not understand the ramifications. That is not your problem. Your issue is, how are you in agreement with people who are operating incongruently? Yes, I did a whole series on narcissism, Kevin. And narcissism is you will attract narcissistic people when you have weaknesses in your field. And if you grew up with a narcissist, then you have some really hard lessons to learn about how you have been made vulnerable because of your parents' weakness. Oh, facial expressions. Facial expressions. I'm sorry, Omar is saying facial expressions. I don't know what your question is about facial expressions, but nodding is agreement here in the United States. Now, I know in India they do this, which I found very confusing when I was traveling there, because here, nonverbals. So, nonverbal communication is a communication. Telepathic communication is communication. However, when you are sitting silent amongst people who are doing poor behaviors, that is an agreement that you are giving to those people to do that to you. And you probably didn't even know that. Oh, Pablo. Kevin, your dad was a narcissist. I'm so sorry that you have to learn those lessons. They can be very hard. But I have done videos on here. Kevin is saying his dad is a narcissist, and essentially taking all psychological babble out of it. All narcissist is an imbalance of the ego. However, the behaviors have really some strong impressions that get put on to other people. So I have a series on here, Kevin, about narcissism if you want to go look at it. I think it's a 3-part series, but what I will say about a narcissist is this, that it is a resonance. And when you are resonating with narcissists, you have some areas within your field that are vulnerable and weak that need to be realigned and strengthened. And that means creating an inner relationship with yourself, with God, with source energy, and that will help you. That will help you. Pablo, I don't discriminate. I just am not engaging with your comments that are not aligned to oneness. Somebody is asking, what can I tell you about Sigma personality? I just had an awakening and now everything makes me sense. My ex was a female and converted to a narcissist too. Okay, so I don't know what you're referring to with Sigma personality. What I will say is that the soul has many aspects that need to be expressed so you can have profound learning lessons in this physical evolution. As far as an ex that is a narcissist, they still might have some expressions. But really, the ego work is what we're all need to do here, is because we can be very easily manipulated from the ego mind. And if we don't do our own ego work, meaning coming back into the heart, disconnecting from the mind and the negative or overinflated aspects of the ego mind, we will see and experience some great distortion and some excruciatingly painful realities that come from those distortions. So, what I would say is don't get hung up on labels of what things are. That would be what I would say. Number one. Number two, I would say that traditional psychology has a way of going into labeling and diagnosing. And when we do that, we tend to create some blocks to being able to perceive from a higher perspective. What advice for, I want advice for women. I'm just looking at the questions here to see. Hi, Rosa. Good to see you. Oh, Sigma. Omar is saying that Sigma means focusing on yourself and love yourself more than others. Um, okay, I don't know. I haven't heard that in reference to what I would say is that's an inflated, distorted ego. But we all need to love ourselves. It's not about loving ourselves more or less than others. It's about knowing that as we love ourselves, we can expand in love with others, from my perspective. Very interesting, Omar. So this is what I think is really challenging about language and how people are trying to understand distortions with labels. So a distortion is a distortion, period. And if it's occurring within the ego mind, that will be distorted. The only place to not have distortion is when you are completely in connection with the 0 point frequency, which is total neutrality. Hi, Jay. Kevin, my dad was an alcoholic. So that's not uncommon for there to be some addictions with narcissists because obviously narcissist is already a weakness and a vulnerability to other aspects. His wife, my mom, was an immigrant from South America and she didn't speak English. And when they met, I suspect my dad sought out someone who couldn't defend themselves. Well, now you're projecting on what they are doing, which really, how does that help you, Kevin? How does that help you grow? What I would suggest is, what is it that I need to learn from my dad? We want to look at the light things, all the good things, and we want to look at all the dark things because we want to bring them all into the light, right? So the learning is about uncovering the lessons. And the more that we become conscious of what the soul lesson is between you and your father, the quicker you can neutralize any triggers around that. Because also you might find that you tend to avoid certain things of how your dad triggered you, or you might be responsive to your wife based on how you were with your dad, and that's projection. That's what happens when people are projecting their wounds onto their relationship. That's why you want to look at triggers and to heal yourself. And I would say all addictions, it doesn't matter which one it is or what it is, all addictions are a disconnection from love, period. It's not more complicated than that. It's just really simple. Pablo, I'm not giving dating advice unless you can give me a good question. Jay, I'm talking about is silence consent. I'm sorry, I'm not going to go repeat them. Sam. Sam says, I learned that I used to use pot and alcohol since 15 years old to feel normal, and turned out my IQ exceeded the average population, and that it was only a way I could tolerate interactions. You know, you had to use dumb yourself down. Sam, that is not really uncommon. There's a lot of people that don't understand deep levels of communication. And I remember when I first started consulting, I was also an adjunct professor, which is like a part-time professor here in the United States. And I realized that when I was in the college and I was communicating at, like an academic, and then when I went out into the business world, the language just didn't translate and people didn't understand. So I had to change how I communicated to get the learning and the lessons across to my clients. Now, that doesn't make them dumb or anything like that. It's just a different way to communicate. When you're young and you're seeing and sensing things differently than the masses, this is when it's really helpful to focus on your self-esteem and your confidence, because the substances actually create a disconnection to the heart, which is going to make you more vulnerable and feel even more disconnected in communication. Jay is saying, sometimes I hate myself. I'm sorry, Jay. Hate is such a strong frequency that I would really encourage you to really delve into your relationship that you have with Creator, Source Energy, God, and learn to access higher levels of consciousness. Oh, Omar, your mother is a narcissist and she always abused abused you with her personality and put you into that led you into being a medical student. Narcissistic abuse is it's chronic in our society, and I've talked in videos earlier on. This is video 204, but in videos earlier on in the series, like before 100, I did videos on narcissism, and I've worked with groups of narcissists. I'm very skilled at working with narcissists. Sam is saying long periods of silence combined with self-reflection helps to find oneself. Well, you're always right there where you need to be, right? We're always, wherever you go, there you are. True that. That is very true. No, Omar says he knows how to deal with a narcissist. Good for you. We hopefully it's with healthy boundaries. And what I will say is, if you have a lot of narcissists in your life, if you have more than one that you have regular contact with, you have vulnerabilities in your field that must be addressed. So learn what it is that the narcissist triggers and heal that. Once those wounds are healed, you will no longer attract them in your life. And it will always be a conscious choice as to whether you want to be with them or not. Sam says, I cut my narcissist ex off, and she called the SWAT team to have me. They lie all the time. Narcissists lie all the time. Well, you were wrongfully joined. Well, narcissists are often taken over by what's called dark entities. And I have a series on this YouTube about the manipulation. I think I titled it Manipulation. It's a three-part series on manipulation. And, narcissists, when people are that far gone in their egos, they are easily taken over, and they do some really dark things. So it doesn't surprise me at all that this topic has brought up narcissists, because the woman who was doing those things to her husband in the story that I told you, she also was a narcissist. I didn't know it at the time because I was so naive. When you cut off a narcissist, it really means that you just need to let it go. They're going to do what they do, right? Isaac says you're a narcissist and you need help. Book a session. You will not be a narcissist anymore. But I will tell you, you will be balanced. Your ego mind will be balanced, but there will be work, but you will no longer be a narcissist. Narcissist is an easy fix, and I've helped hundreds of people who are narcissists. Especially when I was resonating with the narcissist. Here, I was just telling the story of a narcissist, and look at how it came up. So people know the behaviors of narcissists are radical and irrational, and they don't make sense. And it makes no sense to go into agreement with that, but people do it all the time. And yes, Sam, narcissists believe their lies all the time. And you can't tell them the truth because they believe what they believe because they're out of their mind. They are literally so disconnected from their heart, and what they create is a black heart. And a black flowering heart is a dangerous, dangerous person to be around. Is the underlying cause of narcissism their own severe insecurities? Well, there could be many reasons as to why people turn into a narcissist. However, the biggest one is that they've been traumatized at deep levels. The wounds are deep, and they haven't processed them. And that causes a fracturing, a mental fracturing within the mind and the heart. And if that goes unattended to, it creates a hardening of the heart and often a black flowering of the heart, which is why they will be able to do such dark, evil, unthinkable things to other people, because they're in such disconnection. And their need to control is trying to create safety in their mind, but it doesn't work ever. Okay, well, I hope you all have a great Saturday. I am Kiana Sage, and I guide people to peace. I hope you found this video helpful and supportive in your journey, and I will be back tomorrow. Eric, good to see you. I was just signing off. I hope you guys have a great day. Eric, I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for being here. Have a great day. Bye.